I was precisely 1 week away from submitting the most critical document of my academic career, my master's thesis. Countless months of exhaustive research, sleepless nights, and caffeine-fueled weekends had culminated in the contents of a single laptop. It represented not only my academic dedication but also the bridge to a professional future I had tirelessly fought to attain. My living situation was modest. I balanced multiple part-time jobs to sustain myself, often struggling to make rent, let alone afford cloud backups or replacement devices. But despite the constraints, I remained proud. I was building something meaningful, entirely on my own. Please consider subscribing to our channel and share in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. One evening, my brother burst into my room in a fit of anger because I refused to drive him to a party. I declined calmly, explaining that I needed to finish my thesis. His response was dismissive and tinged with resentment. "You think you're better than everyone just because you're in school?" I chose to ignore him, a decision I would soon regret. Moments later, a loud crash echoed from the living room. I rushed out to find my laptop in ruins on the floor. The screen was cracked through the center, the keyboard detached, and the body bent beyond repair. Standing above it was my brother, arms folded and expression smug. "Oops," he said dryly. "It slipped." I froze. My breath caught in my throat as I dropped to my knees, staring at the shattered remains of my work. Every file, every carefully crafted draft, obliterated. In tears, I turned to my parents, pleading for their support. But they were unmoved. My mother chuckled dismissively. "It's just a computer. Stop being so dramatic." My father shook his head with amusement. "You kids and your digital nonsense. You should have printed it out like people used to." It was as though I had stepped into a nightmare. The very people who were meant to care most stood there, apathetic, even entertained, while everything I had worked for was destroyed before my eyes. What was worse, they didn't even attempt to hide their favoritism. My brother offered a shrug and a final jab. "Maybe next time, don't act like you're the only one who matters." I left the room without a word. No shouting, no confrontation. I sat in the dark, rage simmering beneath the surface. And in that silence, I made a decision. This would not be the end of my story. It would mark the beginning of something far more deliberate. I gathered what little money I had. I pawned my guitar, skipped meals, and begged my thesis advisor for an extension. I began to rebuild my work using university computers and flash drives, working graveyard shifts and writing in Google Docs like my future depended on it, because it did. But as I painstakingly reconstructed my thesis, I also began compiling something else. You see, while my brother continued to play the part of the carefree, party-obsessed golden child, I had begun collecting evidence. Receipts, bank statements, charges he'd made on our parents' credit card, fake IDs, alcohol purchases, even repairs for a window he had drunkenly broken and blamed on a neighbor. My parents had never questioned him. But I did. And I waited. The day I finally submitted my thesis was also the day I walked into the dean's office with a different concern, not about myself, but regarding a student who had recently plagiarized an entire assignment. My brother. I had found the original source online. The match was undeniable. My parents remained oblivious, still doting on him as though he could do no wrong. But that illusion was about to shatter. In the aftermath, I distanced myself from them, not out of spite, but because I needed every ounce of strength to rebuild the foundation they tried to break. While I fought to complete my thesis, alone and without support, my brother walked around as if untouchable. My parents still saw him as the favored child, unaware of the reckoning that was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. The night I submitted my thesis, I did not weep from exhaustion. I wept because I had survived. I had restored everything he had tried to erase, but my journey was far from over. While my parents lavished praise on my brother for the bare minimum, achieving a B grade, avoiding traffic citations, they never once acknowledged the monumental effort it took for me to reach graduation. Not once did they ask if I was all right after the incident with the laptop. Instead, they upgraded his car stereo system and hosted a barbecue in his honor for staying out of trouble. Meanwhile, I held my life together with duct tape, willpower, and quiet fury. But fate, as it often does, favors those who persevere. My thesis was selected for a prestigious national award. I was invited to present it at a conference in Chicago, all expenses paid. I told no one. I simply packed my one decent outfit, boarded the flight, and stood before a room filled with scholars, innovators, and professionals. People who saw me, who valued my voice, who applauded my work. For the first time, I felt seen. Upon returning home, I was met with chaos. My brother had been caught cheating again, but this time, it extended beyond academia. He had submitted a plagiarized article to a local magazine under my name. I only discovered the deception when the editorial team emailed me, requesting revisions to an article they believed I had authored. After tracing the piece, I confirmed it was copied verbatim from an obscure blog. I confronted him calmly, laying out the evidence. He smirked and said, "No one's going to believe you. You're the dramatic one, remember?" But I was no longer just the dramatic one. I was credible, documented, connected. I compiled a comprehensive report and sent it to the university's Academic Integrity Board, the magazine's editorial staff, and the ethics committee. But the most consequential blow didn't come from me. It came from the bank. Remember those reckless charges my brother had made on our parents' credit card? New tires, fake identification, online gambling? I had documented them all. Time-stamped receipts, merchant records, and, most critically, a signed application he had submitted using my name. He had fraudulently opened a $2,500 student line of credit under my identity. This was no longer just irresponsibility. It was fraud. With assistance from the university's free legal clinic, I presented the case to the financial institution. They launched a formal investigation. My brother was summoned. My parents panicked. My mother sobbed. "You're tearing this family apart over money." I responded, measured and calm. "No. He did that when he tore my life apart, and you laughed. They tried to silence me. My father offered to settle matters privately. My mother pleaded, 'Let it go. Family comes first.' I looked at them and replied, 'I am family. You just forgot that part.' The court date was set. My brother cited mental distress. My parents attempted to shift blame, accusing me of waiting too long to come forward. But I brought emails, receipts, screenshots, an organized archive of truth. I carried myself with composure and clarity. I was not seeking imprisonment. I was seeking accountability. I wanted him to experience what I had, to rebuild from the wreckage he created. So, I demanded full financial restitution for the following: replacement of my destroyed laptop, costs associated with thesis reconstruction, compensation for the fraudulent credit damage, emotional and academic disruption. The total, $75,000. The judge ruled in my favor. My brother's accounts were frozen. My parents, desperate to contain the fallout, agreed to cover the settlement. They turned to him and said, "You owe her that much. She's the favorite." That was the final blow, because in that moment, I understood something irrevocable. They would never see me as a daughter, only as a buffer, a convenient tool to protect their golden son from consequence. So, I walked away. The next time they tried to contact me, they were met with an auto-reply. "This number is no longer in service. Please contact your favorite child instead." 6 months passed in silence. My parents never called. My brother reached out only once, to accuse me of ruining his future. But I was done explaining myself to people who ignored my pain, who remembered I existed only when they needed something signed or silenced. I relocated to a new city, accepted a position at a prestigious think tank, an institution that paid me well, valued my intellect, and, most importantly, respected my name. But the universe wasn't finished writing this chapter. One evening, I received a call from a woman named Olivia, editor-in-chief of a rising investigative journalism outlet. She was researching a series of academic fraud cases linked to a certain university. My brother's name had surfaced repeatedly in connection with plagiarism rings, falsified recommendation letters, and reselling essays. She had come across the court transcripts. My name was on them. "I'd love to hear your side of the story," she said. Initially, I hesitated, but then I realized something. My silence had protected them for far too long. So I agreed. I didn't sensationalize. I didn't attack. I simply told the truth. I spoke of a young woman whose academic future was shattered by her own brother, of parents who laughed and dismissed her anguish, and of a family that only pleaded for peace once the courts intervened. The article went viral within days. Title: Family Loyalty or Family Scapegoat, One Woman's Fight Against Toxic Silence. Professors shared it. Former neighbors reached out. A high school teacher sent me a message. "We always knew you were the strong one. But my family, they lost the one thing they had always cherished, their reputation." My mother's book club rescinded their invitation. My father's long-anticipated promotion was quietly withdrawn over integrity concerns. And my brother, he was blacklisted from internships and academic programs because the world no longer dealt in rumors. It dealt in receipts. And here was the twist they never saw coming. The think tank I worked for had recently acquired a historic family estate in my hometown, intended to be transformed into a research and innovation retreat. The very estate where my family had hosted their annual reunions for years. I didn't acquire it out of vengeance. I acquired it because it was ideal, serene, spacious, and symbolic. But when my parents reached out to reserve the estate for their next reunion, the booking request landed on my desk. I didn't respond personally. My assistant sent the new reservation policy. All bookings subject to owner approval. Family members with unresolved litigation or documented history of abuse will be declined. They understood the message. But it wasn't over yet. A week later, as I prepared for our annual retreat on the estate grounds, a familiar vehicle pulled into the driveway. My parents stepped out, older, wearier, humbled in a way I had never seen. They didn't recognize me at first. I was dressed in a crisp white suit, walking alongside keynote speakers and program directors. I bore no resemblance to the young woman who once begged them to listen. My mother's lips trembled. My father's eyes fell to the ground. "We didn't know it was you who..." I raised a hand to stop them. "You did. You just never thought I'd own anything." They tried to apologize, tried to explain. My mother murmured, "We were afraid you'd turn the world against your brother." I smiled, calmly. "No. He did that all by himself. I simply stopped protecting him." They asked if I would reconsider, if they might still host their reunion on the property. I looked at them gently and said, "There's a public park 2 towns over. You'll find it less intimidating." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to prove anything. Their silence, their shame, their stunned expressions, that was enough. Because in the end, I wasn't the scapegoat anymore. I was the success they tried to erase. I was the woman they ignored, until she stood at the gates of what once belonged to them, holding the keys they would never touch again. That was justice. Not loud, not cruel, just final. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Globe showing Europe, Africa, speech balloon.